Shim Kai. Nicht wenn der Hassen jemals Hunde die Rebbe wegen Schliches. Wir haben schon beide gewusst, dass es ein Fortschliches.
Da hier doch nicht vergnügen und sagen, als ist jeder der mit, was macht, richtig basieren ruhig. Der und wir kein noch Aiden und noch Aiden und nun noch die Grenze der Griechen und bringt es zu hart Sinai, wo dort Herr jeder ist und nicht die Hawaii weggekommen.
Gerne Zeiten der Besfahrung.
I'm not sure why it's not working.
70. Und Punkt, wenn ich komme, geht noch wel Hadako und sagt mir, dass der Rebbe will sich vor in Europe. Frag ich, wo in Europe? Sagt, was ist denn auf Kamine? Italien, Milan, Adum. Nur geben wir Teher, bis ein Stückchen Jemut, als einer soll wegfahren vom Reben. Das, ich kann nicht geben, kein Moschel. Das ist, als einer soll stehen auf dem Zentrum, stoppen, herumfahren, sich haben. Cholischen, ich dort bei 77, wir haben Ziegrit der ganze Haus und vorne weg. Und wir sind rein auf eine Weile zum Reben inwendig. Mit den gehalten bei uns gehen, mit dem Mal der Rebbe hat sich aufgestellt und gegangen gedummen Satanie und gesagt, nun, wenn wir auf dem Plane, wir können nicht wissen, öfter das Treffen nicht wissen, was da war Tanje, mit dem geben Tanje. Wir sind ruhig und da ich gerade also wir hosten mit der Rabbi Bezalel gewahrt, bis mir reinkam.
Dabei soll das Wegen auf die alle Kinder, was die Eltern fielen sie auf den Weg mit einem Spitzchabad. Und wir letzten Jahren, als sie mit uns verkehrt, wie man sagte, wenn sie bleiben, größer Sidi, größer Lomdim, größer Schamaien, soll sie der Ewigste helfen in Seherweg, Nachlauf und Schäm von Israel, von dem Reben von schweren Niedgel, gesteht in Hemmschach von Resamachwa, was sie mir will, als soll man zählen. Dafür hat das nie gefühlt mit einen Taten, und so viele der Tate geht mit der größeren Baum. Da sich nie gefühlt mit seiner Mutter, hat die Trock der größeren Schädel oder auch gegolten hat. Nur darf wegfahren in der Medine, wie ihm schickt
Position plane, maar daar hebben we gegeben aan Tanja. Und ich habe auch gegeben zu. Und schreit auf mir, weil da sitzen, und ich habe geschämt mich. Aber da habe ich gegeben an Tanja. Und ich sage, kennen mit der Mann. Du hast gewinnt in der zweiten Klasse. Gehe ich in der ersten Klasse. Ich habe keinen mehr gesehen. Und wir kommen zu ihm. Und es ist mit meinem Balabostitschkeschen oder Chassene, mir auf Beite gewinnt. Gewinnt. Hebt sich an die Schliches. Und gleich als ein Heil und Reste. Mit einmal kommt der Psener Chevleman. Ich sage, das ist ein schöner Chevleman. Und ich überkuppere mit der Makif. Und sagt auf Englisch, ich sehe, sie ist ein Chabadnik. Efter hat Tanje. Das ist der erste Baruch und Schliches.
Demut wird mit Kuim, Adishem, mit Zade, Gever, Kinono. Bedarke Jechbot, der Rebestelle, der Mamschich, und sein Jechbot von den Teinu. Hoelina soll sein, Bahatzloch, Ogdelo, Muflogo, Gorki, Pschute, Bechol, Hamitztarech, Lohem, Hamisastim, Hamistadli, Minefesh, Yad Bossem.
We came to think we knew no one or anything. And somehow the Zippels just sort of, took over, They would call us and we were there. And they showed us this very nice 2-bedroom, living room, kitchen part, just right for a young couple married 6 months. It would have been perfect. My husband looked at it and, nope, he didn't want it. So they took us to show us the other apartment. very big, very terrible, terrible condition. Very, very primitive. I walk through the house and my husband goes, this is more Ufarat Tzaddik. I got 2 tables and 50 chairs. So we should be able to bring it. I made a floor plan of the apartment and I sent it to the Rebbe. And I said, in this room we're doing this, and in this room we're doing that. Seri Chabad is going to start here, and the Shmuasim are being translated here. And at one time, the Rebbe was talking about us, and so we pulled out. So they have 12 rooms.
Und werden die Frieden, das zugerät mit dem Vertrieben, 10 Jahre, 12 bis 13 zu 16, gesehen zu haben in Milan 12 Tiere.
And that whole first year, at every farbrengen, there was a sign for him and for me.
Wir da mit der Gerschen Mendels Korre, mit dem Rose, mit dort, werden zu schwitzen. Soll sagen, nach Haifa, Gerschen Mendel da rein. Nach Käse Gorl. Und dann von der Schwester, wo der Salme, Rebsal, von der Schwester, nach Hause gebracht.
I remember Rabbi saying to me, when you come, you'll start with the youth, you'll start a school. No one wanted a school. And I remember once writing to the Rebbe and saying, I feel like my neshama was sent down to this earth just to knock on doors and hear them say no. The Rebbe said, it seems from your letter as though you have doubts as to whether the one that sent you made a good choice. Surely you don't have those doubts, even though I won't take it personally if you do. But being as I'm sure that you don't have those doubts, and that the one that chose you chose wisely, continue on with your work, and in Yirtzeh Hashem, you will be Matzliach.
Antiken Jahr hat geöffnet, Jud Gimel Tammuz im Chag HaGiula, der Rest der Gan Israel, was sie da in Europa, durch Harav, Gershon Mendel, Darelik, mit all Attituden, zu welcher in Treue zusammen in der Gosse Harabonis, mit allen Titulen, zu welcher sie Israel. Haben sie dort durchgestellt, auf Bais Lebanim und auf Bais Lebanis und Shiurim Ligdelim und Azach, was alle Chassidus von Europa bis Chabad. Haben das noch nicht gekonnt aufstellen, haben das aufgestellt an Amerikaner geborene Mädel mit der Ingel, was sie geboren in Russland. Und danach hatten sie verschickt, was Jochen. In Italien schon Jochen. Und der Ingelach und der Mädelach von dort sollen nach kommen, Zelle, Bere, Chavaye, sollen gehen, Beresham, Veneged, Mashiach, Zitkenu.
This production is made possible through the generosity of the members of the GEM Foundation.
Das, was sagt im Medrash, als dort kos HaKadosh Baruch Hu im Yisrael shepidron lebein ha'umis. Is nie der Pshat der Rebischter will, als bechol Medina und Medina soll verwogt werden, a Kamus Gedele von ihm. Nur echad mit kem Gelele Barbaria, echad mit kem Gelele Sarmatia. I das konner aufbauen, die ganze Medina, oder sie kann sein, a durch, was sich abgeben mit den Iden in a Medina Rechiko, wird es werden a Teifach, wird werden a der Id a Teifach. Al Menasle hat Fiach und wird aufbauen die ganze Medina, Lechayim und Lejero, und Mafelo Lejer Gott. wo der Vater ist geomur legive, da gewähnt die Stadlos achig Dela, in die, was gefühne sich Rechekim beechus, Rechekim beruchni, afal pi, was krevin begashmius, und hat jechet kepschute, die, was seine Rechekim begashmis, bis kepschute in apina achire cheko beevam, haze agashmi, auf hin zu bringen, der Eile zu Teira, wie Simchos und Yomtev. Es soll der Mila, der Ikor Eile Tfilin, was Ruksho Kol Teira Kula Tfilin mit alle Mitzvot. Wo das ist der Kirchet am Mechome Bikiflayim, wo die Schluchim, was ein Nahin zu verwogen. Droben sie sich amol, Tainis Binomle Benatzmum oder Binomle Benkino, oder Binomle Ben Odom Chavere, Hayitochen verwosset das Nofel begerolla, als sollen sie gefunden an Lechet bei ihrer Schneien bemishpochen, gedei zu Matzel sein nach Stott oder am Medine, als Medie sein dort wegen dem Ebersten Veterosio mit Zweiser, und kann reden mehr nicht wegen der Union im Pschutim Betachlis, worden zu kennen edele Sachen, so haben sie noch den Scheiches nicht. Und auch drum sagt man, also das ist die Chursisch aber Kodesh Borcho. Als wie bald der Rebester hat Ezekli, Mazel Zolton, und die Schlich ist Davke in Apino Rechiko, ist auch das ist sein Tachlis Aschlemus, und duru wird der Griechen, dass dem Inje, was kommt, das bestimmt eben nicht der Griechen, duru, was sich sparen, sein Davke in der Nord, wo dort kommt dann der Limo der Tere Benoko und der Kima Mitzvah von Isjenes, nur wo dann der Fall lernen mit der Blatt gemorren Lehrer und mit keinem seiner Mitzvah mit der Hidu Mehrer, mit Mehrer Hidu. Worin in Amedina Rechiko konnte sein der Hidu von Berev Am Hadras Mehrer, worin dort in der Toderweile in Berev Am, muss dort kamen Hidurim, was konnte testen, der Farbe das nicht tolle Welt. Die Jasche Helkom shall kol Eime, was sie tun das Benefesh Chafetze, und vorn uns einem Male die Schliches Besimcho Vetur Leivov, wo sie werden nechet Mezake sein Sof, Kol Sof, oder Dinach Scholit, wo sparen sich und willen sich mit Rinen von Nord. Und Amerit sich ein Trott von Nord legt mich schön zurück. Und mit Bett haben wir so ein Riss geben, ein Preis und ein Medal und Klappen auf den Plätze. Als schon gehabt mit Silas Nefesh und auf ganze 5 Minuten ist ein Riss von seinen Dalle Dames und hat gerät mit der zweiten Nieden wegen der Linie von Teiro Mitzvah. Ich sehe das mit Silas Nefesh, warum das ist ein Mechiton gekommen schwer. Das kommt aber nicht zu dem Miller, die Name Shavea, wo der Rebester will, soll sein, die Galle Queg Malchusa, in der Lesen, bei jeder Kol, die ganze Welt soll wissen, bei jeder Kol, Theater Piaute, bis in die Pino, Achini Dachas, wo das wird durchgeführt, das geht durch die Schluchim, wo sie vorn Kipschuton, bin Amok in Rochim. Und arbeiten dort, tun dort mit der Simcha Vetur Levov und seinen sicher Matzliach Lemaila mit der Chatela. Der Pfarrer, der Meschaler, der Rebesterin, mit sie dort und der Rebbe der Nossi. Und mit sie dort, der Halwai soll sein, der Kein Bakedesh Chazisicho, sollen sehen orthodox, was sie sehen orthodox, was sie führen durch die Schliches in die Medina Rechikim.
Okay, good luck. We are in the middle of a story of the Rashbatz, and before we begin the story, let's dedicate our class tonight to our farbrengen tonight, to Refuah Kreva Shlema, Mrs. Morovich, Her name is Sarah Leah Bashokat. She's going right now through a surgery. And this story of a tzaddik should be a schus for her. As is known, that the story of a tzaddik is a bracha for all good things. The previous Rebbe said that people make three mistakes about the power of the blessing of saying a story of a tzaddik. People say, the Friedrich Rebbe said, that saying a story of the Baal Shem Tov on Motzei Shabbos is a segula, it's a blessing to have better parnasa. So the Friedrich Rebbe said, not necessarily is it only on Motzei Shabbos, well, not only on Saturday night, you could say stories of tzaddikim at other times as well. Not only is it a blessing, not only is it about the Baal Shem Tov, it could be about other tzaddikim, not only is it Motzei Shabbos, not only Saturday night, and not only is it a blessing for parnasa, it's a blessing for all good things. So the emphasis, though, of saying a story of Baal Shem Tov is true, though, because Rebbe told Rabbi Moshe Levin that he should always say a story of Baal Shem Tov as well on Motzei Shabbos. But in the story we're going to share tonight, continuation of the story of the Rashbatz, there is also a segment about the Baal Shem Tov, so we'll get that in too. Okay, so where were we up to? If you remember, the Rashbatz was beaten up very badly, and he was, for months, he was the doctors were worried about him, and he wasn't allowed to leave the synagogue of the Chassidim because they were afraid that he might get beaten up again. The Misnagdim, the detractors of Chassidim, they had hurt him very badly, and they were afraid that if he left again, they might kill him. So the Rashbatz said that in the months that he was by the Chassidim, which was between the summertime and the month of Shvat, he said he loved it. He said the words of the Chassidim to him were like good oil, like dew of resurrection. Those are his words. And he was very impressed by the pure dedication the Chassidim had to him, sincere, pure dedication to him. He felt how much they wanted his welfare, and it just revived him. I mean, think about it. He was beaten up, and he was an orphan. And just having people that cared for him and really cherished him and wanted to teach him, and they actually knew, a real way of serving Hashem. It really meant a lot to him. So the Chassidim decided that for the benefit of his education, they should send him to study by Ramichal Apotzker. He should go to Ramichal Apotzker, and there Ramichal Apotzker will, in the city of Apotsk, there's a chassid named Ramichal. I'll tell you about him soon. And Ramichal, he will educate Reb Shmuel Batzal Shaftel, educate the Rashbatz, and prepare him for visiting the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Rashbatz was thinking that before he goes on this trip, he should go to his former colleagues and his teacher, Rav Herschel, and he should get a blessing from them. And he knew them for quite some time, and he should go and say goodbye. But then he thought to himself that he knew what kind of hardship they'd caused him, and he was thinking they're not really his friends. He was a very sincere person, very heartsick person, a person full of a very emotional person, and liked the truth. And therefore he's thinking like he shouldn't go back to them. Like, what's he wasting his time? But then he thought, after all, they did do kindness to him and they did raise him, and therefore he owes it to them, especially to Rav Herschel, who he and a few of the other Misnagdim did stand on his side when everyone else tried to beat him up. And he should go back to Rav Herschel and he should thank him. And because of his feeling of he is obligated as to show gratitude, he decided he's going to go to see Rav Herschel, but he still was frightened. He didn't tell this to Rabbi Moshe. This was his main teacher of the Chassidim, because he was afraid Rabbi Moshe wouldn't let him go, because Rabbi Moshe would be afraid that he would get beaten up again. And also, he himself was frightened to go, but he decided he's going to go. And he comes to the synagogue of Reb Herschel, And Rabbi Herschel was sitting together with two other guys, and he was sharing a pilpul, a deep, intricate discussion on a passage in Talmud. And by divine providence, the Rashbatz had studied that exact passage of Talmud they were studying. And when he entered, he felt that Rabbi Herschel was looking at him as someone who had left Judaism, and he wasn't really paying attention to him. As a student that had once been religious, and now someone who had left Judaism. But Rashbatz was watching their discussion, and he realized that he knows quite a lot about the subject matter, and he found a way to enter the discussion, not just enter the discussion, but he was quite knowledgeable about the subject, and he's able to really shine and to show Rabbi Herschel that all of his fears about the Chassidim aren't true, and how he actually still not just as knowledgeable, but really he had advanced quite a lot in his studies of the Talmud. And Rabbi Herschel is listening to him, he's enjoying what he's saying. Meanwhile, the other two guys leave, and then Rabbi Herschel and he start discussing the path of Chassidim versus the path of the detractors of the Chassidim. And he told Rabbi Herschel that he noticed a lot of fine qualities among the Chassidim. In fact, he said, I think that the only reason that Chassidim have such a bad reputation among the Misnagdim is just because of the Alter Rebbe and their humility. He said the Chassidim are really very humble people, very kind people, and very, very righteous people. But the Alter Rebbe told them that they're not allowed, after the Alter Rebbe left, he was redeemed from his imprisonment on the 19th of Kislev, after the Alter Rebbe's long imprisonment for 53 days. He was imprisoned because of his detractors had informed the government that he was supporting the Ottoman Empire, because in truth, Alter was just sending money to help the tzaddik Mendel of Haradach and other tzaddikim who were then in Israel, but the detractors of Chassidim had informed the government that the Alter Rebbe was going against them and supporting the Turkish rule. And when the Alter Rebbe left imprisonment, he sent a letter to all the Chassidim, the second letter that's printed in Tanya, Gersa Kodesh, a letter which begins with the words Kotainti, in which the Alter Rebbe exhorts the Chassidim to not jeer at their detractors, even though God has shown such kindness to the Chassidim and redeemed the Alter Rebbe. He tells them that they have to constantly try to bring in their heart positive feeling to their detractors, and not to speak negatively at all to their detractors, and not to jeer at them. And because of the Chassidim don't want to talk to them at all, lest they say something which sounds boastful and prideful and holier than thou. And that's why he tells his teacher of Herschel they have this bad name. They could easily prove their righteousness. They could easily prove who they are. Herschel listening to them, and he proved to Herschel many fundamental things that the Misnagdim are saying about the Chassidim aren't true. And in fact, there are many fallacies in the path of the service of Hashem of the detractors of Chassidim. And he showed many of their customs, many things that they do, and very fundamentally that they're wrong with things that they're doing. And how the Chassidim, right, and the path of Chassidim is correct. Herschel was listening to him, and then he told Herschel how the Chassidim decided that he should go to visit a certain chassid of Michal Apatsk, and he's going to train him in service of God. And then he'll be able to visit, finally, the Tzemach Tzedek, visit the city of Lubavitch. And so Herschel responded that he had heard that the Tzemach Tzedek was indeed a great genius in Torah. However, Herschel said, I think that for your benefit, it'll be better for you to stay with me for 2 or 3 years studying Gemara, and that will be the best thing for you, at least for 2 or 3 years to study with me. I'll be able to help you perfect your knowledge of Gemara and perfect your. So the Rashbatz told Herschel that the Chassidim are afraid that if he doesn't begin to study by Rabbi Michal, he will forget. He'll maybe learn Torah, but he'll forget about the giver of the Torah. And they want him to go to Rabbi Michal, so he will teach him to be conscious, not just of Torah study and the knowledge of Torah, the intellect of Torah, but to be connected to Hashem, to God, the giver of Torah. So Herschel almost broke into tears, and he says to Rashbatz, he's at least God should help you, that you should be a Jew who at least is machzik b'Torah Hashem. You should at least consider the Torah of God to be something, hold on to the Torah, at least to be a Jew who holds on to Torah still. And these words, this blessing of Herschel, really surprised and hurt Rashbatz. He realized that what the Chassidim said was true, that the detractors of the Chassidim, the Misnagdim, were really maintained this foolish notion that the path of the Chassidim was somewhat heretical, and that the truth is exact opposite. As the Gemara says, that the Gemara discusses the value of reverence for Hashem. The Gemara says that if somebody has a lot of wheat and he puts the wheat in the storage house and they forget to add the kav chumtin, they forget to add a measure of preservative for the wheat, all of the wheat will spoil. And Rosie, want to join the story? Come, Rosie, come on my lap. You said a bracha? Say a bracha. If they don't have the measure of the preservative added to the wheat, all the wheat will spoil. In a similar way, the Gemara says, if you don't have reverence for God, you may know lots of Torah, but the Torah will spoil. The Torah won't be the way the Torah is supposed to. So you realize that they really don't know who the Chassidim are, what they're about, and they just maintain this foolish notion that their path of God is serving Hashem is heretical. It's ridiculous. Anyways, so Rabbi Shmuel Betzalel Shaftel was informed by the Chassidim that there was a chassid who was traveling to Lubavitch, and on the way to Lubavitch, he would be willing to bring Rabbi Shmuel Betzalel to visit and to stay with Rabbi Michal Apotsk, and so he should travel with him. So the chassid takes the Rashbatz with him. And right away, Rashbatz says to him, I don't really want to go to Remichel. You're going to Lubavitch. That's really my goal. I'll go back to Remichel and hang out with Remichel. But I think I should just go straight to Lubavitch. I shouldn't stop off in Potsk. I should go straight. You're going there already. Let me go with you. So Chassid said, first of all, I can't make a decision without the community. There was a communal decision that they said it was beneficial for you to go to Rashbatz, to Remichel. So I'm not going to interfere. And second of all, I personally think that in order to go to the Rebbe, you need to prepare yourself first. And I think it's a good idea for you to go to Remichel. So Rashbatz agreed to go. He comes to Remichel. Let me tell you a little bit about Remichel. Remichel's father was one of the hidden tzaddikim who lived even before the Baal Shem Tov was revealed. The Baal Shem Tov was revealed. Baal Shem Tov at first was a hidden tzaddik, and only revealed himself as a tzaddik and to the world when he turned to the age of 36 years old. Until then, the Baal Shem Tov was hidden tzaddik. The Baal Shem Tov had before the Baal Shem Tov was revealed, there was a tzaddik who lived at that time, whose name was Michel's father was, one second, let me find his name. His name was Reb. His name was Reb Zalman, I think. Hold on. What was the name of Michel's father? I don't want you to miss out on Michel's father's name because it's hidden tzaddik. Why should you miss that? 1 second. Michel's father's name was. I'm not going to find it, I guess. Michel's father was a hidden tzaddik, and when he turned the age of 90 years old, he came to Baal Shem Tov, and Baal Shem Tov said to him, very cryptic words, I don't know the meaning of these words. He said to him, Ben Tishim Lashuach, the Mishnah says when you turn 90 years old, you need to stoop over. Reb actually once said the reason why people become hunchback at an older age is because it's reflective of how spiritually they're more in a state of reverence for Hashem. Therefore, they're all, so to speak, always in a state of bowing before Hashem. Anyways, Baal Shem Tov said that Ben Tishim Lashuach, and how to speak, said the Baal Shem Tov. You know how to talk, and yet you're not speaking. But your son, Reb Michal, he will speak. And then the Baal Shem Tov said prophetic words. He said, your son, Reb Michal, he's called Michal. I don't know how this relates to the word Michal, but he's called Michal. And Michal is related to being Michal, because he will be a student of my student. He'll be a student of my student, meaning the Alter Rebbe, my student's student. Michal will be a student of my student's student, meaning he'll be a student of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe will reveal a path in the way that even a simple person will be able to achieve a love and reverence for Hashem. Okay, Michal's father's name was Meir Zalman. And Michal Apotzker was someone who himself had Ruach HaKodesh. He indeed became a student of the Alter Rebbe. He stayed by Alter Rebbe for several years. And he became also a chavrusa sort of with the Tzemach Tzedek. He used to study for 5 hours a day, every day except for Fridays. And Erev Yontiv, he would study for 5 hours a day with the Tzemach Tzedek. So he was really someone very special, uniquely gifted to be able to study with the Tzemach Tzedek. So the previous Rebbe actually said about Reb Michal that angels would do his bidding. Reb Michal didn't visit Tzemach Tzedek after he became Rebbe. He said that the Alter Rebbe was able to limit his light, but and therefore he was able to handle it. But the other tzaddikim, I don't know what this means. He said he can't stand with them on the same board. I guess that means that their righteousness and their light was beyond the way that he could receive it. Either way, Reb Michal cherished those who would travel to Lubavitch, and he would always bless those who would travel to Lubavitch. May God give you success to receive the teachings of chassidus and the path of serving Hashem in prayer with a true inner feeling and the way that will correct your character. Reb Michal would also walk with anyone who would travel to Lubavitch. He would walk with him for several miles, carrying their things, because it was such a special thing for him when someone would go to visit the city of Lubavitch. Anyways, the Rashbatz arrives at Reb Michal. Remember, Reb Michal had divine inspiration. Reb Michal would, most of the time, he would spend in his attic. He would still live in this attic, and he would study Torah all the time. And I think the previous Rebbe used the expression about him that his life in this world mirrored the way things were in heaven. Really a special, unique tzaddik. Anyways, when the chassid brought Bais Bezalel, Rabbi Michal immediately says, these are one of the souls that you've made in Shvinzian. He's quoting the verse the Torah says about Abraham, that Abraham and Sarah managed to bring many souls to God in Haran, and the nefesh asher asa b'Haran. Says this is one of the souls that you've made in Shvinzian. So the chassid said that the community has asked that you, Rabbi Michal, take him under your wings and teach him so that he will be able to be prepared properly to visit the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek. So he arrived in Apotsk 3 days before Purim, and Rabbi Michal agreed to teach him, and he stayed with Rabbi Michal. And Rashbatz later recalled how special it was being with Rabbi Michal, how Rabbi Michal really, he said, being with Rabbi Michal, come here, my lap, Rosie. Rabbi Michal, come in lap or not? You can't run around. You can come in lap or we'll go to a different room. Rabbi Michal treated him as if he was a convert trying to convert to Judaism. He said to him, he taught him about what chassidus is about, and he said to him, among other things, he said to him that you have to be very careful not to do everything with truth and not to fool yourself. This was one of the first things he told him about preparing to see the Tzemach Tzedek and to absorb the teachings of chassidus. Make sure not to fool yourself and to do things with truth. And he stayed with Rabbi Michal for about 1.5 years, studying with the chassidus. And the chassidim of Shvinzian really felt that Rashbatz was uniquely gifted in his power of concentration and his diligence in wanting to understand things. Therefore, they saw a bright future for him in the path of chassidus, as indeed he became a sort of colleague of the Marash and a teacher of the Rabbi Cashapp and the Frierdiker Rebbe, and so they thought that he would benefit a lot by being with Rabbi Michal, and he stayed there Michal for about 1.5 years. It's a divine providence. I'm sharing the story now because about after 1.5 years being with Michal says to him that you've gained all that you can by being here. You won't gain anything more. And it's time, basically, if you like to go to the Rebbe, you can go now to the Rebbe. And this was before the holidays, before Shani Yom Kippur, and he stayed there Michal till after the holidays, and then he set off forth to visit Lubavitch. He traveled by foot. In general, Chassidim would always travel by foot to Lubavitch, and he traveled to Putsk also by foot. And so he set out to visit Lubavitch, and he arrived from after the holidays to the area of the cities surrounding Lubavitch in Parshas Mishpatim, like this year. Parshas Mishpatim was Rosh Chodesh Adar that year, was Friday and Shabbos, like it is this year. And he arrived in the city of Dover Misl, which is a few miles away, about 7 miles away from Lubavitch. He arrived there on a Thursday, and he had a meal at this hotel, and he went to sleep. And the owner of the hotel wakes him up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and he says, "There's someone traveling to Lubavitch." He said he wanted to go to Lubavitch. Someone's going. You might want to go along with him. And they walked from the Remisel to where? To which city? Lubavitch. And they came to Lubavitch, I think at 4:30 in the morning, around 4:30. And he comes to the synagogue of the Tzemach Tzedek, and there are some chassidim there, and they welcome him, but he doesn't respond to them. Instead, he runs to the oven and to warm up, and he falls right asleep. But he is awoken. He hears the name of Ramichla Potsk. I forgot to mention that before he left Ramichla had given him a paper of requesting a blessing from the Tzemach Tzedek. And Ramichla said to him, "Please do not read my letter." He gave him the letter. He said, "Please don't read the letter. Please give this letter directly to Tzemach Tzedek." Okay. He also, I forgot to mention also, the Rashbatz asked Ramichla what to do, how to prepare to see the Rebbe. What should he ask the Rebbe? And he didn't tell anyone what Ramichla said about what to ask, other than Ramichla said to him, thank you, Rosie, 1 second. He did tell him various things about what a Rebbe does. Ramichla said to him, among other things, "I love you with your faults, but you have to get rid of your faults." And he asked Ramichla, "How do you get rid of my faults? How can I get rid of my faults?" So Ramichla said, "I don't have the power to help you. I could only create a goylam, a thing of clay, but the Rebbe can take the goylam and make this thing of clay into a person, and I could just put together put the clay together, and the Rebbe could take the clay and make it into a person." That's what Ramichla said. Anyways, he couldn't resist. At first, he respected Ramichla, didn't want to open and read the paper, but he couldn't resist, and he read the paper. But he noticed, guess what was on the paper, Rosie? It was an empty paper. It was empty. He arrives in the synagogue of the Tzemach Tzedek, and he falls asleep, and he hears the Gabe Tzemach Tzedek saying, "Who here has brought a letter for Ramichla Potska?" And he wakes up and he says, "Oh, I brought that letter." So the Gabe said, "This is the 3rd time I'm coming to the synagogue. The Tzemach Tzedek is waiting for you. Come with me." And he walks with the Gabe to the room of Tzemach Tzedek, and he gives Tzemach Tzedek the letter, and the Tzemach Tzedek takes the letter, and he says to him, "Why did you not listen to the instruction of Ramichla? He told you not to read the letter." And he rebuked him for that. Anyways, the Rashbatz really cherished this first meeting with the Tzemach Tzedek. So much so, there's a lot more to the story. Let's say one more point. Every year, he would celebrate his visit to Lubavitch as his birthday. I know Yehuda, you celebrate your visit to Lubavitch and Yud as your spiritual birthday, right? So it's very apropos to celebrating his visit to Lubavitch as his birthday right now, because right now there's a Kines HaShluchis. Everyone's celebrating the mission that the Rebbe gave us to bring Mashiach, and the right now is the is the worldwide. Now this year it's virtual because of Corona, but all the shluchas around the world are celebrating their mission, and not just their mission, but the mission of all the Jewish people to prepare the world and to greet Mashiach. So the Rashbatz would celebrate every year his arrival to Lubavitch as his birthday. He said that when he came to Lubavitch, at first he was thinking like, this is what he was working so hard for his whole life. He wanted to finally reach this place, and he had this really great yearning for his mother and all those who were among all people in his life. That was someone who was very special to him. But then he said, I've come here. This is where I'm born, and this is what my life is about. And that first Shabbos was Parshas Mishpatim, like this year, and it was Parshas Shkolim, like this year as well. And that he describes how the Tzemach Tzedek came into the Beis Medrash, accompanied by his children came in all dressed in these with their hats and their dress, and they stood around the bima. And the Tzemach Tzedek came in on Friday night, and he gave a discourse on the verse of Pasha Shkolim. If the Torah discusses this week the laws of lending money, and Tzemach Tzedek said, "In Cashapp, the soul is called silver. Why is it called silver? Because the soul always yearns to be with Hashem, and Hashem gives a person the soul as a loan. And every day that the soul is here, the Zohar says, every moment you're here in the world, every day you're in the world, you're able to bring a garment to your soul, and you're lent the amount of days you're here." So the Rashbatz really cherished that discourse, and his first visit to Lubavitch. So every year he would go to the Ohel of the Tzemach Tzedek. Rabbi Moshe actually requested before he passed away, when this request was fulfilled, to be buried within 50 ames, within the 100 feet of the burial place of the Rabbi Moshe Tzemach Tzedek. And he would go there every year on the same day, on the Thursday of Parshas Mishpatim, and he would recount his visit to Lubavitch. He said, "This moment I left from the Missal to go to Lubavitch. At this moment I arrived at the door of the synagogue of Lubavitch. And at this moment," and he would put on his tefillin at the exact moment that he first saw the Tzemach Tzedek. Don't ask me what that means. That's something for him. What the moment he first saw the Rebbe meant, what the tefillin means, and why they're connected, and why every year. Don't ask me. I don't know. But either way, every single year he would put on his tefillin at that exact moment. He considered that moment his birthday, and he would farbrengen after he would daven Ma'ariv, Shachas, and Mincha by the shul next to the oil, and he would sleep there. And then he would farbrengen with the chassidim, celebrating this great gift that he had in seeing the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek. May Hashem help us all that we should celebrate our mission, celebrate our connection to the Rebbe, and celebrate B'Korav Mamish to see our Rebbe very soon, B'Korav Mamish, the coming Mashiach. A good Tavach. Good Vach Yehuda, good Vach Charles, good Vach Beryl, good Vach Yosef, and Jeff.
Good Vach.